I wanted to write to people that working inside of organizations. So that's the entrepreneur within an organization. But it really focused on people that have the entrepreneur within their heart, within their soul, and they could experience the joys of entrepreneurship without having to quit their day job.
Welcome to Forward with NACCE, Inspiring Entrepreneurial Action, a podcast that shares the stories of everyday entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial leaders, and the communities that support us. We hope that this diverse collection of stories brings you inspiration, inspires you to take action, and ignites entrepreneurship in your community as we make our way forward together.
Welcome to this episode of Forward with NACCE. I'm Rebecca Corbin, President and CEO of NACCE, and I'm very excited to have a special guest, an author, a distinguished professor, and someone who's done a lot of really good work with nonprofits supporting entrepreneurship. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Alex DeNoble to our program today. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing great. It's going to be a fine day here in San Diego, and looking forward to talking with you today.
That's great. Well, it's beautiful weather in San Diego. I know that traffic can be a challenge, but we're really happy to have you in our studio today. And I want to begin because I know a lot of people in the entrepreneurship world that have either been involved with USASB or NACCE know about your work, but others who might be listening may not have heard about you. So I'd like to begin with maybe some things that impacted you growing up and eventually choosing a career in higher education and entrepreneurship. So just share with us a little bit about you and your life story.
My life story. Well, wow. Okay. Thank you so much for this. I was born in New York City and raised in New Jersey, and really spent my formative years in the East Coast in that particular region. My initial training was in the area of public accounting. And so I started working. I went to school in the area. I started working in the area. And I just knew that I wanted something different because a friend of mine moved to Blacksburg, Virginia, and I went down to visit him. And that's when I discovered Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech was so different. The atmosphere, the environment was so different from what I was used to in a city environment that I decided it just drew me there. And I ended up staying for a master's and a doctorate, and one thing led to another, which I ended up getting a teaching position, a faculty position at San Diego State University. So never really haven't been on the West Coast before, drove across the country, start my new job, and that was 40 years ago.
That's amazing. And I imagine, even though being an East Coast person, moving and probably working and living most of your life on the West Coast, you've probably traveled all around the world, haven't you, doing your work and speaking with people. Maybe share with us a place or two, or maybe an experience of where you've traveled to.
Wow. I've been to Russia, Taiwan, Egypt more recently. I spent a lot of time in Mexico working because of our proximity to the border there. But each place, and also Helsinki, Finland. I've had a great relationship with Aalto University in Helsinki. So for the past 15 years, I have been spending 3 weeks in the summer in Helsinki, Finland. Aalto has been very good to me there. I get an apartment in downtown Helsinki, and I work with them for a while. And I've really gotten to know Finland and that area quite well. And I would have never imagined that before.
Yeah, it just shows you really what having an entrepreneurial mindset can do. And you find environments where you really feel like you can thrive and prosper as you have at Virginia Tech. And a lot of people have those experiences. I know in the work that I do, we work a lot with community colleges, trying to get, first generation students and, people of all ethnic backgrounds and some from different countries, and get them on the on-ramp to higher education. And whether they go into the trades or eventually transfer to a university, it's really kind of the gateway and to happy life. And I think that was one thing I read about Finland. They are some of the world's happiest people, so that's always a good
Yeah. Yeah.
a good place to be. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about some work that you've been doing. I know you've written a number of books, and your most recent book, which I'm going to show for our video version, "The Entrepreneur Within." I love the cover of it, and there's a tagline on the front that says, "You don't have to quit your day job to experience entrepreneurship," and that is, wow, radically inclusive. So maybe let's begin. Tell us what inspired you after all of the work that you've done to write this particular book.
hmm Well, this is my first book. I've written a number of articles. I've had the opportunity to, as part of my career as a professor, over a span of 40 years, I've written many academic articles and so forth, but I've always wanted to write a book. And I wanted to learn that experience. And so when I had a chance to take a particular program that taught me how to write a book, which is very different from writing an academic article. It's a totally different writing style. And when I thought about it, I wanted to pick something to learn how to write a book, but I wanted to pick low hanging fruit. Now, I've been teaching corporate entrepreneurship with executives at Qualcomm, San Diego Gas and Electric, Siemens Corporation, and in Helsinki, Finland, with Korean companies like LG corporations, Samsung, and in Mexico. I teach a lot with CETIS University with graduate students and so forth. So I have a lot of experience in working with executives and graduate students in teaching this particular topic. So as I learned how to write in this new style, for me, a new style, it was easy to do that while I was on a subject matter that I knew something about.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've seen you cited in so many books and textbooks. It's really remarkable that you really embrace this opportunity to do something different, which is really what we try to encourage students and leaders to do. And even in your introduction on page 15, you begin with a quote by Duke Ellington saying, "A problem is a chance for you to do your best." And to
Mhm.
me, that's really the framing of an entrepreneurial mindset. It's not trying to avoid problems or cover up problems, but looking at it in terms of opportunity. And as we were preparing for this conversation, you were sharing with me a little bit about the FBI framework, which is kind of a cool acronym. So maybe you could share with everybody, what does that stand for? And then I'd like to get into an example of
Sure.
something that you write about in the book.
In corporate entrepreneurship, I was writing from the perspective of somebody with an idea inside of an existing company, but did not have a pathway to have people in the organization take the idea credibly. And so I wanted to provide that kind of a pathway. And to be honest, I was looking for a way to provide a framework that was simple, easy to remember. And FBI came to me in the shower one day, I have to admit. And it was an aha moment for me. And I said, let me try this. If you've got an idea and you want to present it inside of your company, you have to be able to frame it in such a way that decision makers could understand it and ultimately support the idea. But then you have to get the buy-in of other people inside of the organization who might be affected by your idea. And I've got some examples around that. And then ultimately, you have to lead the initiative if you get that chance, and you have to implement it. So frame the idea so decision makers could understand it, get the buy-in from people that you need to support it, and then focus on the implementation of the idea. So FBI framework for corporate entrepreneurship. That's how it evolved.
That's great. And I was sharing with you some of the things that we have coming up in NACCE's world, we're doing an Innovation and Action Summit out in the Los Angeles area in just a couple of weeks. And there'll be a convening of 11 college presidents and some foundation people and other leaders. And I thought that framework and your book in particular offered some real pearls of wisdom. And I can tell in some respects it's written for more of a corporate audience because it's not heavy with academic jargon. There's facts and things sprinkled in. But one of the things that I love about it is your examples of people. So I'm going to flip ahead to chapter 6. The title of chapter 6 is Aligning Your Project with the Organization, Culture and Structure, Achieving Strategic Fit. Now, what could be better for either corporate leaders or academic leaders who are trying to align with a corporate plan? They've got to work with their board. They have shared governance. They've got to work with faculty. They've got to work with staff. They've got to meet student needs. There's got to be that alignment. So you tell the story of Todd Mitchell at Aqualung, and I think you illustrated a point that you felt connected very well to the FBI framework. So tell us a little bit about Todd's story and how that connects.
Well, Todd, I met Todd through a mentor program that we run at San Diego State University. And it was during the writing, the early writing of the book, where I had to find people that could share stories with me, that I could illustrate different concepts about corporate entrepreneurship. And Todd shared with me his previous work at a company called Aqualung. Now, Aqualung has been around for a long time. It was founded by the famous undersea explorer Jacques Cousteau decades ago. I used to watch Jacques Cousteau as a child in the 1960s, and I was always fascinated by that. And Todd's working for Aqualung at the time. And Aqualung has always been known for its scuba diving equipment. That's naturally where Jacques Cousteau came from. And Todd was in sales, and he came across a famous Olympic swimmer. I'm not allowed to use this person's name, but famous Olympic swimmer that had a goggle, a unique swimming kind of a goggle that they felt would be a nice addition to the Aqualung product line. But selling that kind of gear was very different from the traditional gear and the traditional branding of Aqualung. And so Todd had a challenge that he had to frame the idea. When he saw this opportunity, he wanted to frame the idea so that senior decision makers could really understand it. And there was the branding associated with this particular swimmer that was well known. It was in the swimming world, but in a very different way. So it was a challenge that he had to convince them through potential volume. But the more important part of that was the implementation piece, because he had to get country managers around the world to embrace this and to be able to align it with their strategic decision, with their operations. Because again, this is a very different market. It's a very different sales approach. It has very different business process implications. So that's the one challenge for people trying to implement new ideas. They see the idea, but then to recognize how an organization has to reposition its business processes to effectively implement it. That is what I tried to illustrate with Todd Mitchell's story.
Yeah, that's a great example. And it shows you that really as the world changes, and we've all experienced that collectively through the pandemic, that if we don't innovate and make those changes, in some respects you risk a little bit by changing the model, and costs you money, it costs you time. But if you don't, you risk being left behind or really outpaced by others. So I really appreciate that example. And I think that, it offers a lot, regardless of industry that people might be in. And I think, just kind of getting back to the title is really that it sounds to me like what you're saying is the entrepreneur is within all of us, really, despite how many talents we might have or how few talents that we might have. A lot of the work that we do here at NACCE is supporting everyday entrepreneurs. So these might be folks that have a skilled trade or an idea for a Main Street business, all the way up to some of the tech startups and some of the folks that you've mentored throughout your career. So I want to thank you so much, Alex, Dr. DeNoble, for joining us. I really encourage people to really think about, how might, tapping into your own entrepreneurial spirit open up opportunities in your own life or in your community. And like you said, you're constantly traveling around the world. So even though you've worked have a distinguished career for 40 years, it sounds like your work is going to continue on for decade plus to the future. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if you wanted to leave us with a final thought. I'd encourage people to get on Amazon to pick up this book, The Entrepreneur Within, but if there's anything you just want to close out with today.
I chose that title, The Entrepreneur Within. It had a double meaning to it, and I'm glad you picked up on that, because I really focused, I wanted to write to people that working inside of organizations. So that's the entrepreneur within an organization. But it really focused on people that have the entrepreneur within their heart, within their soul, and they could experience the joys of entrepreneurship without having to quit their day job. And that's what I tried to convey with this book.
And as you said, often one thing leads to another. So thank you again. I really appreciate that. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you. And you too. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you will continue to explore the many ways to define entrepreneurship with NACCE as we celebrate opportunity, failing forward, and success, learning from one another along the way. Subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and follow at NACCE on social media, and learn more about us at nacce.com/podcast. Stay tuned for a new episode each week. We look forward to making our way forward together with you.